go live and we will
All right.
get started here. Let our 15-second delay kick in here.
Mm-hmm.
Let me go to my Facebook and make sure that the sound is muted. That way it doesn't come through on both sides. So
Yeah, I just popped out the chat, so I can just see the chat, and then,
nice. That way, yeah. And anytime any questions that come through, feel free to stop me and there we go. Let me
right.
mute that. There we go. What is going on, everybody? We are back with another stream here today. I have Dan from Come2Japan, which
Hey, guys.
I don't think I've ever just called you Come2Japan or Dan. I call you Come2Japan Dan.
Yeah, a lot of people, that's what they usually call me, Come2Japan Dan. So, I mean, I'm totally good with that. I think maybe Tokini Andy, who you had on stream maybe 3 or 4 days ago, I'm the moderator for his streams and stuff like that. And we've done a bunch of video collabs. And I think he started calling me Come2Japan Dan, and it just stuck. So
yeah. I mean, it's a pretty sweet nickname. It kind of rolls off the tongue. So
Come2Japan Dan.
Yeah. Cool. So, well, I appreciate you joining. Do you want to do a small introduction? Well, we just kind of did an introduction, but do you want to tell people a little bit, because you have a YouTube channel and stuff like that?
Sure.
If you want to tell them about it.
For sure. Yeah, of course. Again, my name is Dan, and I run the channel Come2Japan. Come2Japan. I have a spiel that I do every single video, and I'm pretty sure you've seen it. But hey, this is Come2Japan, the channel that wants you to come to Japan. My name is Dan. Thanks again for joining me on another episode. That's my whole spiel and everything like that. Basically my channel is just all about, life in Japan and just things I find interesting about Japan. Recently, I've been doing videos on medaka, which are Japanese rice fish, and they've kind of picked up a little bit of traction. And I make other videos, just kind of exploration videos around Japan. And also language videos, specifically kotowaza. And kotowaza are Japanese proverbs or sayings that have a little bit of knowledge to them. A little bit of a little knowledge nugget is what I call it, associated with them. I guess you could say they're sayings, inspirational, not really inspirational quotes, because some of these kotowaza or the proverbs are hundreds of years old. So, but yeah. Hey, Kyushu Trails here. Good evening.
Yeah.
I mean, good morning.
Yeah.
So yeah,
cool, man. Thank you. Yeah, thanks for the. Whoa, I think you're seeing. Hold on. I think you're seeing chat faster than I am. That's insane.
I have it. Yeah, I have it popped out. I basically closed the YouTube. I just popped out the chat. So I'm probably seeing chat pretty live, like pretty instantaneous. So.
Like it came through for you faster than it came through my the live like. So I just left that live hub where you set everything up, and I just have that up because it came through faster for you on the actual YouTube chat versus when I did it on the other. So I'm actually gonna just pop over here that way. Anyway, that was a long. No one cares about that. So yeah, so you you live in Japan. You live in Fukuoka.
Fukuoka, yeah, which is in the southern part of Japan. Most people are like, "Oh, Japan, Tokyo." Well, yeah, I mean it's the big city for sure. But I live in Kyushu, which is in the southern part of Japan. Maybe about 4 or 5 hour plane ride, 8-hour train ride on the Shinkansen or the bullet train. But anybody serious traveling between Tokyo to Fukuoka is going to use an airplane. It's if you love trains, you can definitely do it. But if, it's 8 hours on a train or, 3 hours on an airplane, so.
Which actually
for sure
puts Japan in pretty decent perspective in terms of size, because I still think of Japan as being small, but I guess it's long. Like it's such a long island.
For sure, yeah. And it kind of broke up there a little bit, but it's very, very long. It is small for sure, but it's not super that small. I mean,
right?
It's small, not like it's not huge like the United States or anywhere else.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah. So how long have you been in Japan?
Yeah, so living full time, I'm going up on 3.5 years living here full time. But I've been traveling back and forth to Japan in different capacities for probably the last 13 to 14 years. When I was a college student, just kind of backpacking, and taking random trips just because I was learning Japanese.
Hmm.
And then also professionally, when another little bit of backstory about me, I lived in Hawaii for 10 years.
Whoa.
And that's where I picked up I moved to Hawaii to learn Japanese because they had a great Japanese program there. Lots of Japanese people in the community. So many Japanese people in the community. But So there's that. But I also worked for a company, a travel agency, a Japanese company, and back and forth business trips from Hawaii to Japan. So yeah, living here full time, 3.5 years, going on 4. Um, Soon. Yeah. And then again, just traveling here for the past 13, 14. It's getting, I say I've studied Japanese for the past 15 years, which I'm pretty sure I'm 34. So I started studying when I was like 19 ish.
Right. Okay.
So 15 some odd years. It's getting to the point where it's like, yeah, I've done this for a long time.
Right. Realistically,
Mhm.
you're coming up on that point where it's almost half of your life.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
What
For sure. And I still mess up.
Yeah. Well, what was your like the initial surge into Japanese? What or was there something before that that made you say I want to learn languages in particular, or is it just Japanese, the culture? Like uh what was kind of the interest there
For sure, for sure. Yeah, quick. I'm gonna say good morning to
to Toki?
Tokini Andy. He popped in on chat there. He said he just woke up and he'll be bumping in and out. But ohayo gozaimasu.
Yeah.
But yeah. So for me, I was already interested in languages for sure. And I'm from Kansas
Oh,
originally.
okay.
And there's a big Hispanic, I don't know, Latin American, I don't know the politically correct term, but
Right.
there's a big population already. So it was around me. And then I think there was some Vietnamese kids too in my area. And I just remember at a super young age, like, you don't really have too much of a concept of languages
Right.
or other language. You're just a kid running around being a dumb kid, throwing rocks and getting dirty and playing.
Right.
But for some reason, I kind of, looking back, I saw these other kids, speaking different languages. And I'm like, if they're not speaking English, then how are they communicating? Like, I had that whole, like, they just can't actually be talking,
Yeah.
because I'm not understanding them. And I was just so confused about it. And I remember being confused about it later in life. So, and then I also recall again, I think I was watching my older brother just playing like regular NES Nintendo, right? And I think he was playing some sort of kung fu game, and there was like some very stereotypical kind of probably fake Chinesey kind of
Right.
I don't gibberish or whatnot, and I was like mimicking that and kind of just going like shoo sha shee sha, being very stereotypical, being a dumb 7 or 8 year old kid. I was like, wow, what if I'm saying something in this language that, like, I'm saying something, you know?
Yeah.
But I was just going, I was just being, a dumb kid. So I always had this kind of thing in my head of like, wow, there's these other languages, but with Japanese, well, I don't know, I'm pretty long winded. So
No, you're good. I
uh,
mean,
in in elementary school, my elementary school teacher, she was American, but she spoke French, or she lived in France, or something like that. And I think it was like fourth grade, and about an hour or so out of a regular elementary school day, she would teach us some French. I don't remember any of it,
mm,
but I thought it really cool, and I remember that vividly. Like, oh wow, this is like super amazing that she's teaching us this French. Again, I was third or fourth grade, don't remember any of it, but I thought it was really cool. And then moving on, I got into high school, and then in America, Spanish is a big thing, so I took Spanish all 4 years in high school. My sophomore year, I became the teacher's aide. So basically, 1 hour out of the day, like I just would help that teacher
Okay.
with any Spanish prep, like grading the really simple, like the lower level Spanish stuff, preparing worksheets and stuff like that. And she would give me some instructions in Spanish and stuff like that. So I did that for like 2 years in high school. So that's kind of like languages. I was like, oh man, languages are really cool. And it's
Yeah.
just awesome.
Did
Uh, and then with Japanese, so graduated high school, and Spanish was just something I did in high school. I was
mm,
super interested into it, but I didn't really follow it, didn't really continue with it or anything like that. I went to college, right? That's what you do right after high school, but I dropped out right away. About I took one semester and I was like, I'm just not gonna. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm
gotcha.
spending all this money, and was like, what am I doing? I don't want to spend all this money if I have no plan. I don't know
Right.
what the heck I'm going to be doing. And then for about a year or so, I did the whole, America thing, finding myself. Who am I?
Right.
you know, that phase. And I was still young at the time and working odd jobs and stuff like that. And from there, was living in an apartment with some friends. And one of my roommates' girlfriend's friend, kind of getting, you know,
Yeah.
existential here, but I'll bring it into a later point. Um, but she was exchange student in France, so she was all about French,
hmm
and she'd already studied Spanish. And the interesting thing with her is that she was Japanese Vietnamese American. So her mom was a Vietnamese immigrant. So my whole life story. Yeah, we're getting to my whole life story, Andy. So mom was a Vietnamese immigrant and her dad was a Japanese immigrant. So they were both first generation immigrants. She was
Gotcha.
Vietnamese. He was Japanese. So she was Japanese Vietnamese American.
Right.
So she could understand, and something we'll probably talk about later, bilingualism.
hmm
But she could understand base level of Vietnamese because that's what her mom spoke to her. She could understand um, Japanese from her dad because that's what her dad spoke to her. She obviously understood English because she went through the American education system. So we ended up dating. Long story short, we ended up dating, and she was all into these languages and stuff like that. And she was like, "Hey, let's study Japanese together." I'm like, "Okay, I don't have anything else better to do. I'm just working these odd jobs, and I already, studied Spanish, so I was already interested in languages.
Yeah.
But that was the initial push. That was the initial boom. That's what got me into Japanese. I had a Japanese American girlfriend.
Okay. Yeah.
Um, and from there, it just so many other things just kept pushing me farther. So,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah, okay. That I mean, it makes sense. I've heard a lot of people talk about how like getting in a relationship with somebody obviously is. I mean, that's um Kyle that I had on the channel, which I've had on twice. Who I always refer to him as my buddy Kyle. That's like a big running joke. It's a dude I legitimately know in real life, but
Oh, cool.
his girlfriend is Vietnamese, and so he's learning Vietnamese. So you go down that. Actually, so you talking about at a young age, getting
Mm-hmm.
into stuff when you were young.
Mm-hmm.
I've not asked this a lot in interviews, but anytime somebody mentions it from like that young of an age, I always ask, when you were young, did you think
Mm-hmm.
that language was just a one for one word exchange? Like, oh, they're saying this, it's just they have their own different word. Like you didn't even process the idea of grammar and different speech patterns. You just thought, oh, okay, this word is this. Like it was just a word exchange type of thing.
For sure. Yeah. I mean, thinking about it now, I don't think I thought about that at all. For me, it was just one of these things that I was just flabbergasted. I'm like, if they're not speaking the language, then they can't be communicating. Like, how is it even possible?
Right.
It just was one of those things that was just so, I guess you could say, foreign to me.
Yeah.
Um, it was just one of those things that it's just, as a young child, when I was a kid, it just was like over my head, and just, you know, it was amazement, but it was also utter confusion. Um, just because I couldn't understand it, you know. Um, so
Ju-
yeah, I mean, I just had no, I didn't really think it was one to one. I just thought like this is impossible. They're making it
right.
up, you know.
That's and he
But
said kind of
yeah,
like secret languages, like word for word, letter for letter. Yeah, I mean that's
yeah,
like I can remember being young because I didn't get into language learning until I was way older. But I can remember when
hmm
I was young because obviously like you said, being in the United States and Spanish being so prevalent here, I just thought it was just a one for one. Like oh okay, because you
hmm
learn the numbers. So you're like all right, one is uno. Okay, that's a one for one
no, no,
exchange.
you
Yeah.
know.
So like I just always thought I don't know. It's just always something I like to throw in there because when you're young, you obviously don't have the brain capacity to really think. Oh my
Exactly.
god, all these grammar patterns and how to
hmm
properly say stuff. So, um,
For sure, and all the cultural contexts that
yeah,
are associated with all languages, you know, and that's we'll probably get into it later. But Japanese, like the culture is a huge part of the language, you
oh
know.
yeah,
So,
yeah.
my,
So let's jump into and again, anybody watching, thanks for the. There were a couple of people that trickled in and said hello, 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 welcome, welcome.
morning,
Again,
everybody. Good
feel
morning,
free.
everybody, wherever you are.
Feel free questions as per usual standard live stream protocol here. If you have questions, leave them there and we will get to them. Immediately. But let's get into your channel, right? Like
Yeah.
your channel, Come to Japan. Your idea. You want to give people no strings attached, free trips to
Yeah,
Japan. So let's chat about that. What is your
for
idea?
sure.
What is happening there? Let's get people encouraged and
For sure,
send them
for
to
sure.
Japan.
That's, one of the reasons why, I pushed my seat down a little bit. But yeah, I had this just kind of brain spark, you know. I'd been doing YouTube for about from 2013, just kind of making some random videos and stuff like that when I was in Hawaii and whatnot, and then moved over to Japan. Moving internationally, moving
Mm-hmm.
my entire life internationally, and was having my son, my 2-year-old son. And I'm pretty sure he'll probably make an appearance because that's what 2-year-olds like to do.
Oh
They
yeah.
like to come and bug you.
Oh yeah.
um, and so my YouTube channel just kind of went stale, just because lots of life changes. I was becoming a new dad. I was moving internationally, figuring out how to, get adjusted to living
Mm-hmm.
in Japan. Even though I'd studied the language for a good 15 some odd years, you still have to, get used to living here
Oh yeah.
full time. So YouTube just kind of took a really far back burner, right? And then one night I just was sleeping and I don't know, I just couldn't sleep, something like that. And it just a brain spark. I was like, wow, I love Japan and I love Japanese culture and I love everything about it. And when I was kind of starting my Japanese journey, I didn't really have anybody to kind of cheer me on, or I don't
Mm-hmm.
want to say cheer me on. No one that really kind of supported my ambitions
Ambitions.
or what I wanted to do. My family was just kind of, you want to study Chinese,
Right.
I love my parents, we're just from a really small area, and it's just they have no concept
Yeah.
of, Asia, or,
Yeah.
lack of, you get that. You get that.
Yeah.
So it was kind of, I had this kind of dream and aspiration of learning Japanese and going to Japan, and I just really didn't have any of the, I guess you could say, support.
Mm-hmm.
I had to do it all by myself, and I'm glad I did, because it really built character. But I just think there's a lot of people out there that don't, maybe they're super interested in Japan, but they just don't see a way to come to Japan.
Yeah. Because
And I want to,
it's super expensive, man. Like just a
yeah.
a plane ticket from
Hmm.
I can fly out of Washington D.C., which is
Hmm.
generally a cheaper flight because it's such a heavily trafficked airport. But from
Yeah,
Washington D.C. to Japan is generally between $1,500 usually is minimum.
for sure, for
Yeah.
sure. Yeah. So I mean, there's that, and there's the monetary thing, which, it's expensive, depending on where you're at in the
Mm-hmm.
world. And then also, if you're kind of there's probably a lot of people that are really nervous about, oh, I don't speak Japanese,
Yeah.
and I don't think I could do anything there. But that's I want to help those kind of people that are just kind of anxious, and they're interested in Japan, but they're just too nervous and anxious to give it a try. Um, yeah, so that's one thing. I want to give back to the community. I want to basically use YouTube as a means to crowdsource.
Yeah.
Basically people come watch my content, like, comment, subscribe. And we know how YouTube works, and there's an interesting feature that I've just seen on some of the other bigger channels that I watch, but basically they give you the option to watch all of the ads at the very beginning. They'll say, "Hey, watch 3 ads at the very beginning," and you can skip all 3 of those.
Okay.
I'm not monetized right now, but you know, I skip those ads.
Yeah.
I don't know if you have to watch a certain amount of the link. Eventually, once my channel gets large enough and we start creating revenue, I'll understand that. But again, people just click on a video, watch whatever I have, kind of the Japan related content, skip the ads and stuff like that, and the channel is making revenue, and then we can give that back to the Come to Japan community that is interested in Japan, that wants to come to Japan, and I want to sponsor as many people as possible. So that's part of it. Just the regular viewers. I want to give back to the regular viewers as well. And the second part of that is that I want to invite other YouTubers out to Japan. So I want to sponsor them to come out to Japan, and we make content together. And that's kind of a win-win-win kind of thing there too, where these YouTubers get to come to Japan. They get to make content about Japan. They get to make content, with the Come to Japan community, and they bring their following to Come to Japan. Our channel gets bigger. We create more activity and more community around the Come to Japan channel, and in turn being able to give back to more viewers is my whole idea. So I like what you're doing with your kind of interview series about languages and even the culture around languages, because what we're talking about right now is not necessarily language, but it kind of deals with the language community. I guess you could say travel is another big reason why people learn languages, because they like travel. So that's kind of my whole thing. I want to bring out PewDiePie. Never gonna happen, but that's my whole thing. Bring out bigger YouTubers so they can bring their following to the Come to Japan community, and we all benefit. Basically try to run the channel as close to an NPO as possible, giving back to the community that supports the channel. So
I think it's a good idea. And in terms of people not speaking Japanese, I guess you could, so when they would come out, would you would they choose the destination, or would they come to Fukuoka with you? What's your plan? I mean, because I know that you want to obviously do the collaboration. That's kind of the whole point of that, if you're talking to a YouTuber. But what is your general plans for that?
For sure, yeah. I mean, that's definitely a stage of the YouTube journey that we're gonna have to do. That we're gonna have to evolve and kind of adapt and see what kind of comes out of that. We've got a ways to go to get the channel monetized and actually get the funds going. But that being said, I do have some thought processes that I run through my head, and I was thinking that once we get to that point where we're doing it, we're bringing the first person, and I think the first person that we bring out is going to be the milestone. It's going to be bam, we did it.
Yeah, it's a huge celebration because you made it.
Yeah, it's a huge celebration. We did it. I'm thinking that potentially I'll probably go to Tokyo. I'll go to Tokyo, and definitely rent hotel. I actually worked for a Japanese travel agency, so I'm pretty well versed in travel as well. So I'd like to partner with them somehow. Have a travel agency kind of sponsor stuff. Whatnot. So that might be some deals, but that's again way in the future. But thinking of going to Tokyo to make content there, because Tokyo is the place that it put, I don't want to say Japan on the map, but it's the place that everybody knows and everybody wants to go to. I have a lot of pride in Fukuoka because I've lived here for the past 3 years, and I've actually traveled here many times before, and I love Tokyo. Tokyo's great. I just prefer my
Your home.
hometown. I really feel pride in it to it.
Yeah.
So I'd love to bring people here for sure, but probably around Tokyo and the big cities, Osaka, Kyoto. Uh,
Yeah.
but also, maybe potentially, once we're at the stage to where we can give a free trip away to someone, kind of collaborate with them a little bit. See what if they're
Sure.
interested in Kyoto. All right, let's go to Kyoto, or hey, Osaka, or you know, if they're like, hey, wherever you want to go, I'm like, heck yeah, let's go to Fukuoka
Yeah.
because you know again, Fukuoka has pretty much any place you go in Japan. It has its charm. It has
Yeah.
its charm. It has its gems. For sure, for sure. That's kind of again, eventually, when we get to that point, definitely I put a lot of thought in there. Just one more thing. I'm going to open it up to anybody. I had the idea of kind of creating kind of like a Google survey
Hmm.
to just kind of survey people because I just I want to open it up to pretty much anybody, but I want to make sure I give it to somebody who deserves it,
Mm.
kind of thing.
Sure.
uh so kind of like a little bit of an interview process, and
Yeah. Because
you know
you don't want to give like this may sound terrible. I mean, I don't really know, but you don't
Mhm.
want to give away a free trip to someone who could easily easily afford it like that. Like
Exactly,
because it's
exactly. Yeah. No. And ideally, I'd like to open it up to the entire world. I know there's some visa complications and stuff like that, but I don't think it's impossible. I
yeah.
don't think it's impossible. And if I have a crazy, and I don't think it's that crazy, you know, I don't think it's that crazy enough idea. There are a lot of people that
No.
are skeptical, like, nah, this guy is like full of crap, stuff like that. But those are the people that I just don't need the subscribers. It's like, well, if you don't believe me,
Yeah.
there's thousands of other YouTube channels, go for it, but the people that can honestly, I'm a genuine dude, and if I hope that comes through on my videos and
Yeah.
stuff like that, for sure, for
Well,
sure.
and
Yeah.
I think the hard part is like anytime you have an idea like that, I think so many people are going to immediately judge. But like, I don't think
So-
I don't want to say your average person, but a lot of people like a dream starts somewhere, right?
Mhm.
Walt Disney was looked at like he was an idiot. You know what I mean?
Exactly. Yeah.
Not to go into the Harry Potter series was turned down 20 some odd times, whatever. You know what I mean? So everybody's
Exactly.
like, this is never. And then you see where that So I mean, it's easy for people to cast that judgment until
Mhm.
something starts happening, and they'll be the first ones to come back. So,
For sure, for sure.
and that's not
And
even.
that's a good point, and I feel like it can segue into language in that, you know, some people are going to say like, "Why are you studying Swedish? No one around you speaks Swedish."
Mm,
But if you're interested in it,
yeah,
if you're genuinely have a passion for it, I mean, I just use Swedish because I watched your stream
that's
yesterday and
true.
it's fresh in my mind. Like, go for it.
Yeah,
There's no reason why. There was really no one around me in my situation when I started studying Japanese other than my Japanese Vietnamese American girlfriend at the
right.
time. There was no one around me like Japanese, Chinese, like they didn't they had no concept of what it was. They couldn't
Yeah,
process it. Um, but for sure, for sure, I wanted to say good
yeah,
morning to Japan Get Brandon. He has amazing informational videos about like all the stations on the Yamanote line in Tokyo. So definitely check out his channel because really good vibes and very informational about a lot of the train stops in Tokyo on one of the major lines.
yeah.
So
Actually,
proud of him. Yeah.
I think I don't know if it was recently. I followed him on Twitter because somebody had retweeted something, and it was him talking about that. And I was like, I'm gonna follow this guy, basically in order to remind myself later to go look at some of the stuff that he's doing. Um, but so you're okay. So you're in Japan. Well, fast forward to right now. You're in Japan because I do want to hit a couple of hot topics here.
Sure.
You you're married currently? Are you married?
Yep. Yep.
Is your
Been
wife?
married for 6 years. I better figure that out quick. Yeah. We got married to the 6 years. Yeah, 6 years. 6 years. It'll be
There you
6
go.
years in October.
What is it to someone Japanese or do they speak Japanese?
One more time. Sorry, it kind of broke up there
Oh
a
no,
little
you're
bit.
fine. Is she Japanese or speak
Yeah,
Japanese?
she's Japanese. Yeah,
Okay,
she's Japanese. Yeah,
cool.
yeah, she's Japanese. Met
So
in Hawaii.
okay, gotcha. Because my next question was because I know I've tuned into a live stream or two that you've done, and you speak to your son in
Mm-hmm.
English and Japanese. So I wanted to
Both,
talk
yeah.
about, because it's always a pretty hot topic on my channel when it comes
Mm-hmm.
to children. Because I always talk about, I have a 3.5-year-old son myself,
Mm-hmm.
and so people always ask about raising children bilingual. Hopefully, did I spell that
Mm-hmm.
right? I did spell that right. Okay, uh, but so what has kind of been your goal? Not necessarily goal, but like, because
Mm-hmm.
obviously you're in Japan, he's gonna have to know Japanese. Like that's just
Yeah.
all there is to
Mm-hmm.
it.
Yeah.
But in terms of English and Japanese, kind of how do you split that up? Like, what is your general kind of day to day routine in terms of getting both languages in front of them?
For sure. Yeah. It varies. It varies. Right now, since with all the crazy stuff that's going on in the world, I've been off work for about 2 months now, which
Mm-hmm.
I'm getting paid for. They're paying my full salary, which is yes.
That's awesome. Yeah.
But my son's daycare or hoikuen is basically daycare, I guess you could say in Japanese, um, is closed as well.
Mm-hmm.
So I've been hanging out with my son for the past 2 months every single day, from 8 in the morning till just 24/7 every single day for the past 2 months,
Yeah.
and I've seen his English skyrocket in this past 2 months. Like he's repeating what I say a lot
Mm-hmm.
more, um, and a lot more exposure to it. Because when I'm
Yeah.
working, obviously I'm at school. I teach English, but not only English. I also teach science. I teach gym and math, and the place that I work at is a little bit different. But anyway, we can get into that a little bit later.
Yeah.
So I work for a regular day job, and my wife works a regular job as well. So my son goes to daycare, and his daycare is obviously all in
Japanese.
Japanese,
Right.
right? So he's normally exposed to all Japanese, but like I said, in the past 2 months, because he's been hanging out with me all day, every day, because my wife she's an essential worker and she's a teacher as well. But anyway, I've seen his English skyrocket. That being said, I still do speak some Japanese because I know there are situations that I need him to do something, like tabete,
Mm-hmm.
like eat. I need you to eat your food because you're playing. Um there's situations where he's two. He's still learning how to communicate, right?
Right.
He can't necessarily communicate all his feelings and Egel Jozu says Brandon. um but so there's I use Japanese when I really need to communicate and I need to get him to understand something. But well, I guess like if I know he understands what I want him to do in Japanese, I'll use Japanese.
Mm-hmm.
If I know he understands what I want him to do in English, then I'll ask him in English. But I still probably it's about 80-20 for me. 80% in English, 20% in Japanese. Uh, and then also it's kind of the environment that I'm in. When we go to grandma and grandpa's house here in Japan, they don't speak English, right?
Right.
So he's speaking Japanese to grandma and grandpa. So I'm speaking Japanese to grandma and grandpa. So I'm obviously speaking English. Here at home, my wife speaks English pretty well. She was a flight attendant for 7 years. So, she had to know some English there. She lived in the United States for 4 years. So I we kind of have our middle language, I guess you could say, to where it's you really wouldn't be able to understand our language
Right.
because it's our own language.
Right. Right.
Um, so yeah, but mainly I'm speaking English at home, just because I know here in Japan that he'll have plenty of chances to speak Japanese. I mean,
Yeah.
he lives here. When he starts going to elementary school, once he starts going to middle school, it's Japanese, 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 Japanese. So that's kind of my thing with the bilingualism there. But it's just really interesting to see what catches on.
Mm-hmm.
What catches on with him. And another thing that we always do, like if he wants to watch like Japanese or not Japanese, but if he wants to watch cartoons or watch TV, it's
Mm-hmm.
in English. We put it in English.
Okay.
And I feel like that really works, because with language, well, he's not learning in the way that language like we learned languages, right?
Right.
He's a natural bilingual. He's going to be a natural bilingual because he's born into it, right?
Right.
We're learned bilinguals in that later in life. Well,
Yeah.
I don't want to speak for you because I don't know if you learned a different language when you're younger, but
No.
for me, I'm a learned bilingual,
Yep.
right? I started studying Japanese and Spanish later in life,
Yep.
you know.
And
So,
the argument for that always is
mhm,
if you're a true bilingual, you're
mhm,
always still going to be able to just understand little nuances that
mhm.
a learned bilingual just sometime, like it would be very hard to get, because there's definitely a difference in bilingual native versus bilingual, like learned bilingual. Like there's just
A learned
little
bilingual.
subtle
Oh yeah,
things that you
for
can't
sure.
pick up on.
Yeah. So I guess with my point with the cartoons is that he gets excited for it, right? It's a positive thing for him,
Hmm.
right? Um, so I'm like, hey, you want to watch Just in Time, or you want to watch RoboCarpoly, or Titipo? And those are his favorite shows, which are Titipo and RoboCarpoly are both Korean kids animation in
In
English. So
English.
anyway, um, but yeah, he likes those. He likes Thomas and stuff like that. So he's watching all these kids shows, and he'll pick up stuff from there, right? Like he'll say stuff that I'm like, I don't say that, like he calls me daddy, right? He calls me daddy. In
Hmm.
Japan, usually you say papa. Papa for kids his age, 2-year olds, toddlers will say papa, or
Okay.
they'll say mama, but he says daddy and he says mommy because that's what we call ourselves, daddy and mommy. But he said yes, papa, the other day, and I'm like, I don't. Well, you've never taught you that ever. He
Right.
picked that up from one of his shows, or I don't know. It's just interesting. I hear some banging in the hallway. Maybe he'll make an
Make an
appearance, but
appearance.
maybe I'll wrangle him in here later. He's cute. He's definitely more handsome than me. Uh, but no, it's just super interesting to see him develop. As from a father, it's cool to see him grow. But as having a language mind, having being a lifelong language learner, it's just so interesting to see the developmental stages from a standpoint to where I had to work really hard to get what I have in Japanese, and it's just
Right.
effortless
Right.
for him. So it's just really cool um, to see that, and I can't wait for the day where his Japanese is better than mine, and he's like, "Daddy, nihongo okashi yo." Dad, your Japanese is weird. you know.
Yeah. I mean,
Uh,
I mean, especially with him being surrounded by, going to school and stuff like that, it's
yeah.
gonna be.
Mhm.
I mean, he's gonna be there. There was a question. Do you think it's possible
Mhm.
to raise a kid trilingual?
Um, I don't see why not.
I don't.
I think there's probably countries like in Europe and whatnot where it's just the norm. I can't speak. I don't have too much knowledge about it. I just have the base knowledge of, oh yeah, people in like Sweden, they speak 50 different languages.
Right. Right.
So I think it's definitely possible. And I guess coming from my experience here in Japan, some of my coworkers who also speak, who also teach English, who have kids. There's this guy from Kenya, and oddly enough, his name is Daniel. He's Black Daniel, and I'm White Daniel. That's our joke that
So,
we have going on. Um, but he's from Kenya, so he's teaching his kids Kenyan. I don't know the language of Kenya. Swahili. I have no idea. But he teaches
I
his
don't
kids
know.
that. But they're also learning Japanese, but they're also learning English. So I think it's definitely
I
possible.
think it's Twee. I think it's Twee.
Tweet. I'm not too sure.
Let's see.
But
I'll look it up while you're
I just
talking.
know that his kids, I think one of his kids is old
Nope, I
enough.
was way off. It is Swahili.
Swahili? Okay, cool,
Yeah.
cool, cool. Yeah,
What's
Swahili. But even in Kenya, I know they probably have different, many different dialects and many different, sub
Twee?
languages and stuff like
Twee is Ghana. Okay.
that. Ghana. Okay, cool, cool, cool,
Probably
cool.
not.
So for sure, yeah.
Let's see. We started homeschooling my daughter for kindergarten a year early. I'm trying to integrate Japanese, but I'm not fluent, so it's pretty basic. So
I think
it's,
that's fine.
yeah.
Definitely,
I mean,
basics are definitely,
yeah, it's,
hiragana, katakana. Those kind of things are definitely important.
yeah. I mean, that's, I'm not comfortable enough in anything to. Well, the only thing
Mhm.
that I did speak to my son in when he was really, really young was Esperanto,
Mhm.
just because I did
Mhm.
know Esperanto enough to do that. But he does watch a lot of shows that get that Dora the Explorer kind of stuff, and like where, and he picks it up. He'll say stuff like, so that in terms of integration. Language Learning
Yeah.
Lover says chocolate sushi roll lives in Japan and is teaching her children Japanese as she learns it. I would love to see you guys collaborate. That's for Dan. I'm presuming you should collaborate
Sure.
with chocolate sushi roll.
Chocolate
That's
sushi roll. What kind of content does she make?
sounds
Sounds delicious.
yeah,
Maybe
yeah. It sounds delicious. Perhaps a
I'll
cooking
have to
channel.
look.
Yeah,
Sounds like her. I have to look her up later for sure.
I'll look
Yeah.
it up. So let's I want to talk about your learning of Japanese.
Sure.
What's so when you got started, kind of where I know that you said you went to college and stuff,
Mhm.
and I'm presuming if you've been learning for 15 years, I'm sure you didn't just immediately flock to Duolingo because that company's not even been around that long, I don't believe.
Yeah.
But like,
No, it didn't exist.
what was your
Huh.
what was kind of your process, like your study habits, your patterns, you know, how did you go about learning?
Yeah, for sure, for sure. Yeah, I get that. I get asked quite a bit. Hey, your Japanese is good. How did you learn? Well, it's kind of a difficult question, um, because I've been doing it for so long, and long enough that where I would say the past, the core of my study was probably in the first 5 to 6 years.
Hmm.
With my Kotowaza series, it was really exciting for me because I was learning Japanese again. Like, it's a very advanced, I guess, part of Japanese. But at the very beginning, so when I first started dating this girl, the whole push into Japanese, it was all self study. It was all self study. I wasn't in school at the time. She convinced me. She's like, "Hey, you should go back to school and pursue this Japanese thing." So I'm forever grateful for this girl way back in the day. Um, but it was all self study. Just kind of picking up what she knew, because she was a bilingual, a native bilingual in
Hmm.
Japanese. She would teach me things, but from there, I just bought a lot of books that were available at the time, kind of basic stuff. I don't even I have a few books, and I'll definitely try to bring them in here into the stream. Um, but just buying books that were available at the time, learning hiragana, learning katakana, learning colors, and learning numbers, and just kind of I would just the basics of what you can kind of pick up in any language, like uno,
Right,
dos, tres, cuatro, cinco, seis, un, dos, trois,
right.
um, eat or sansu. People learn that kind of stuff, the very base level stuff. That's where I started, but I had a little leg up because I had that girl with me
Hmm.
who she never really studied it, but she had a foundation because of her dad. But she wanted to connect with her Japan family side more, so she's like, hey, let's really get into this. And she had a lot of really focused and kind of methods that I way back when, like, I can't remember, but I just know at the time, for me, it's always been about studying with people, if that makes any sense. Like, I obviously did a lot of self study,
Hmm.
and I think, and we can talk about thinking because I brought that up in your stream yesterday about like devoting time to thinking practice
Hmm.
in your target language.
Yeah.
But one of the main things is I always had someone with me, whether it was that girl when I got in college. Like, I would always connect with classmates, and we would study together, and we would bounce things off of each other.
Hmm.
And then another thing that I did, I'm not really going in order. I just speak sporadically.
No,
That's my thing.
that's my
But
knack too. Yeah.
I I I surrounded myself with Japanese people. I found Japanese people at my university, and I'm like, hey, I basically forced them to become my friends. I chained them up and said, hey, you're going to be my friend. No, I mean, I'm a pretty likable guy, um, most of the time. Anyway, but I surrounded myself with Japanese people to kind of practice with, and I started studying Japanese in Kansas, so it's not a big thing there. It's really
Yeah.
not a big thing, but actually it kind of has grown because there's an anime convention that came to town way after I left, which is I'm like stoked about. But those Japanese people were like, "Oh wow, this guy is super interesting. Like, he's interested in my culture."
Hmm.
So it was kind of a breath of fresh air for them. because they were naturally, living in Kansas and studying English. So we kind of, I helped them with English stuff. They helped me with Japanese stuff. So I guess that kind of all boils down to, language for me was definitely not a really personal thing. It was a thing to communicate with my Japanese American girlfriend, with my new friends, with my classmates. I got really close with my Japanese teacher. She was a great sensei, amazing sensei, Rumbak sensei. She was Japanese, but she was married to a guy with the last name Rumbak. I have no idea. But yeah, so that's one of my main things. Always making it communicative, communicative, I guess is the word.
So you were in it to speak, like you when you were starting to learn it, it wasn't because you wanted to understand this anime or understand this movie. You wanted to speak to the people,
No,
like you wanted to
yeah,
speak to the
no,
Japanese people.
it wasn't. Yeah, it wasn't anything like that. I mean, I kind of go into my motivations as well. People ask me, "Hey, how did you learn Japanese?" And I kind of go through my motivations,
Mm-hmm.
and they've all been positive motivations. They've all been positive things, fun things, things that have really just set my brain on fire with just, like I want to do this. This is so much fun. And the first was, I had the Japanese American girlfriend. I keep going back to that, but that was a positive emotion, like, ooh, I'm bubbly, bubbly. I want to impress
Right,
this
right.
girl. So it really helped, the my creativity. I wanted to impress her.
Yeah, yeah.
So
Oh, for sure.
there was that. And I watched I'd never really watched anime. I never watched anime, but she exposed me to Ghibli movies, right?
Okay.
Because they're Ghibli and they're amazing movies. And I remember, I think the first one I watched was Kaze no Tane no Nausicaa. So Nausicaa, the Valley of the Wind, I think it's called in English, or Nausicaa in the Valley of the Wind. I'm not sure if you're familiar with it. Very, very good movie. I highly recommend it. But
Yeah.
I ended up crying at that movie. You know, like, wow, this is a dang good movie. And we watched it in Japanese with English subtitles. So that was fun for me. It was a positive thing. Um, so yeah, it was all self study, and then I finally got into. I started going to a junior college that had the decent program, and started studying there. So I guess the main thing is, for me, another thing that I always say is I've been studying Japanese for 15 years.
Mm-hmm.
There's not a single day that I did not use Japanese. Every day,
Right, every day.
every day. And people are like, "You're nuts. That's impossible. How did you do that?" I'm like, "Well, it's really not impossible." Um, and it kind of maybe would segue into my thinking kind of practice.
Mm-hmm.
But when I was a student, it was easy because that's what I was studying. I was studying Japanese
Right.
language, but I was also studying Japanese art, and culture, and geography, and I studied history of samurai at one point. Um, but it was easy for me to spend a lot of time there. But later on in my studies, and I had other things to do or a part-time job. I couldn't devote, at least an hour or two every day to studying.
Mm-hmm.
I would still turn my brain to Japanese mode for at least 10 minutes. You know, my brain would be on in Japanese mode. And it's very similar to what I guess the Swedish guy, I forget his name, Lamont, I think is what you said his
Mm-hmm.
name was.
Yeah.
Yesterday when I asked the question, he'd see something and he'd say, or when he was jogging, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I would consciously do it. I'd be on the bus or I'd be walking somewhere. I would consciously look around me and say, how do I say that in Japanese? But I wouldn't really say, how do I say that? I would just say, sora, which is sky, or odan hodo, crosswalk, or kuruma, or
Mm.
basically vocabulary building.
Yeah.
Vocabulary building is what I would do. And I would also have mental conversations. I would have conversations in my head, you know, in Japanese to switch my brain to Japanese mode, just to get my language brain activated in Japanese every single day. You know, that's what I would do. Living in Japan, I'm looking at kanji right now at this little thing I have over here. So
Right.
really, I'm not really studying Japanese, but I see the kanji for juhachi. It's a juhachi. I don't know what it. I it's easier for me to use language every single day living in Japan because it's
Right. It's
a world.
right.
But that's my thing, and I guess it works for any language that your second language or the target language you want to learn. And I guess it kind of goes back into what you asked, is the study technique. I did it every single day.
Every single day. What was
Mm-hmm.
yeah? How did you Because like I'm finding it more and more recently that it seems like people who are, and this is going to be a very generalized statement, and I'm sure that this statement could get a lot of hate. It seems like people who are more proficient at languages
Mm-hmm.
aren't necessarily specifically studying vocab lists as much as just kind of picking out the vocabulary from what they're doing, right? Matt versus Japan is always, I learn, he learns, or vocabulary, like when I have conversations with him, he says pick out the words that are sticking out to you. So I'm not studying vocabulary lists, it's literally what's popping out. Lamont didn't even use SRS. He for the most part was just reading stuff and picking stuff up. So how was your like vocabulary study? Did you study like not efficiency list, what's the word I'm looking for? What is the word?
Yeah, I'm not too sure.
Frequency list, like a frequency list, or like how did you learn vocabulary?
You can find searches on the internet. To learn English, you gotta know 3,000 some odd. For Japanese, you gotta know 2,000 some. I don't care about those numbers. Like they're out there. But they were never really. I never gave them too much time of day. I was like, okay, sure, cool, a statistic, whatever. For me, obviously, when I was studying in college, I had vocabulary that I had to learn for that lesson, to pass tests and to pass assignments and stuff like that. So I definitely had that vocabulary practice. But again, going back, is I surrounded myself with Japanese people and Japanese friends. So whatever we were doing at the time, I would say, これ日本語で何と言いますか? How do you say this in Japanese? これは? And I'm pretty sure it probably got pretty annoying. I wasn't that persistent, but I would ask quite a bit, like, これ, this is just chapstick. I don't know. リップ. In Japanese, I think you just say リップ. Cream, so that's another kind of, I guess, technique that I use, is just being curious and, whatever was around us or the situation that we were in, like, and I also found that, my Japanese friends would say, hey, in Japanese, this is what we would say. Or they would ask me in English, how do I say this? And I would say, oh, that's a cabbage. Right. In Japanese, you say cabbage, or I don't know. I'm just looking around at me like kaban, kaban, bag, So those Japanese friends who I was actually kind of helping learn English as well, they would ask me, and it was just kind of an exchange kind of thing too. So there was that.
That's actually a good thought too, because if you're doing that, the korewa, whatever, like that's bonus practice on the words that you already know as well.
Yeah, for sure. Sentence structures and stuff like that, and actually communication practice. For sure. So, again, like with Japanese specifically, wanikani and anki, they didn't exist when I was studying Japanese, or if they did, I didn't know about them.
Yeah.
Way back when I started in 2000 some oddish, whenever it was 2006 or so, 7 or so, whatever. It's been long enough. 2005-ish. It's getting to the point where I don't stop counting. I've been doing it for a long time.
Right.
So they didn't exist. But Kevin, what's his name? Kevin on Twitter. Have you what's that?
Kevin Abroad?
Not Kevin Abroad, no. There is Kevin Abroad. Oh yeah, Kevin Abroad. Yeah. I was thinking of Chris Abroad. That's completely different bag of worms.
Chris Abroad. Yeah.
Kevin Abroad. Yeah, Kevin Abroad, actually, on his Twitter, he's been doing a lot of language debates, and they're pretty fun to kind of scroll through. And you can kind of pick out people that are like, yeah, you haven't learned the language, you're just kind of spouting out stuff. And then there's some pretty interesting stuff. But he recently, he put up there a language app. What do you guys think about language apps? Do you think they are a very good tool and whatnot? And my comment is that when I first started studying Japanese, they didn't really exist, But I still had a Japanese dictionary app.
Yeah.
So, and then I also kind of made the joke that I will be using a Japanese language dictionary app for the rest of my life. I mean, just because kanji is just a beast,
Oh yeah.
it's ridiculous, and that kind of goes to the next point. Like, how many kanji do you know? I don't know how many kanji I know.
Enough
A
to get
lot.
by. Yeah.
Enough. I can read and write professional emails, and I had to do that for 6 years. So I can read enough, and I know the kanji that is relevant to me.
Mm.
That makes any sense, and that
for sure.
kind of goes into language learning as well. That it's another thing too, that learn language that is relevant to you and around your interests, because it's going to keep it fun, and you're going to like it.
Yeah.
So for sure.
Well, I didn't.
Mhm.
I generally don't. I don't comment on a lot of on his like language debates, and it's simply because I don't like. I just don't have the energy to argue with people. Because the problem is like he posts it up there as a what's your opinion, and of course, if that opinion doesn't align directly with someone else's, then they say you're wrong. I just don't have time to argue with people. But I mean, in terms of what I think about apps, is I've made progression in Japanese these past 1 month and 9 days without using apps. I've made more progress in this month and almost 2 weeks than I had in the previous year using applications exclusively.
For sure. I definitely think applications, definitely in today's world, they're getting much better. For sure. And I don't know where or how my language skill, I don't know if skill is the word you use for language, but how my language would have been different if I had apps when I started learning, if that makes any sense.
My problem is I would spend, like, because now I'm doing like kind of the whole immersion thing and stuff, and I mean I'm spending no less than an hour a day like purely submerged in Japanese content, and preferably most of the time more. And I just find that for where I'm at in my journey, that I think that that is a way more beneficial use of my time than spending an hour reviewing sentences on Duolingo that's, the pig drinks beer. You know what I mean? Like, just personally. So it's just kind of where I'm at. So
I commented too that I think apps are really good, but they need to be used in balance. You can't just use that. You just can't use one thing. And language is a very complex thing, and there's many forms of it. Like, you have to be exposed to many different aspects of the language, whether it's written, whether it's speaking, whether it's listening, whether it's writing, whether it's an app, whether it's a book, whether it's a live conversation.
Right.
Language doesn't come at you at one form.
Yeah.
So you need to be exposed to many different ways. Another joke, I get is, hey, can you learn Japanese from anime? I said, yeah, you definitely can. You definitely can. But you can't exclusively use that. You can't exclusively use anime, because anime can get pretty dang weird,
Yeah.
It's in its own world. And the example that I use to get people to say, well, yeah, that does make sense. Like, what if someone learning English only used Star Wars to learn English?
Right.
Weird they would sound.
Yeah.
They
would have some quirks.
Like Yoda, So for sure.
Jump into here. So somebody said, should we teach kids dead languages? I mean, here's the thing. In terms of what you're teaching your child, I feel like that's up to the discretion of you. If you want to teach your kid Latin, who am I to say no?
Yeah, I don't think there's anything wrong with it. I think you're maybe teaching them how to learn languages, I guess. I don't know. I mean, if that's what you want to do, that's your cup of tea. That's what you want your kid to learn, do it. Yeah.
Let's see. Hey, how are you? As usual, can't stay for so long. I'd like to know, how many words do you learn per day? Which methods? Okay, well, we actually already... I actually covered those topics prior to even seeing that question. And but we can get into, what are your favorite books?
Favorite books. So, Japanese books, or I would imagine you want to know Japanese books.
Yeah.
For learning Japanese, again, I still have my original textbooks, and they're probably super outdated, but they're what I used. And if I say them, people are going to be like, "What?" And you probably can't find the Japanese books that I use. But I use nakama, which is basically nakama means kind of like tomodachi, but nakama means kind of inner person.
Okay.
Naka is like middle,
Mm-hmm.
and ma is I can probably get it. Let me step over to the bookshelf real quick, and I'll get a few books.
Go, yeah, go for it. Go for it.
Yeah,
Uh,
the bookshelf right here.
the bookshelf. Get the bookshelf. I should pull out some of my anime and stuff. So, let me see what else we got, and then I'll get to the next question after that. I think Duolingo will take over the language world because I have some ideas about that. Nakana. Boom.
Big stack of back books here. Um, All right, and the one that I'm most proud of is this upside down, and this is just a dictionary. It's just Japanese dictionary, but one of the reasons I'm most proud of it is because all of the notes. I flipped through this thing. I can probably say I've read a dictionary.
Because
I went through
so
this,
much.
and I'm not saying you have to do that. I just was interested, and I guess this is another way that I kind of did vocabulary building, because I just was super interested in going through and looking at everything, and I didn't really go word by word by word. I just kind of okay. Tatemae, tatemono, tatsu, tabako, tabi, tamaru.
Just kind of
I
go
just
through,
flipped through and I saw something that looked kind of fun. Kangofu, nurse. So yeah, I drew like little pictures. Like here's key, and you probably can't see, but I drew a little picture of a tree.
Key.
So yeah, key. But yeah. So anyway, this is one of the thing I think having a hardcover Japanese dictionary is always fun, because you can kind of put your finger on the map kind of thing. Just flip through and go boom.
Yeah.
Daigetsu next month. Daigetsu next month. That's a very good thing. So just this one, I don't know if you can get this one anymore. Oxford Japanese Dictionary. This was my first Japanese textbook. Nakama. And this is a hardcover book. Hard Nakama. But yeah, pretty cool. They have a map of Japan in there. And I know they had like workbooks with this. They had workbooks and they had CDs and stuff like that. So this is one that I used. And then when I got into the higher levels, this is the one I use. Intermediate Japanese. This book is, I would say, 90% Japanese. Like there's like, it's all Japanese. Like all the explanations
are in Japanese.
I mean, there's the vocabulary, like the vocabulary kind of, I don't know how well you can see it on there or not. Yeah, you can kind of see some in there. There's the vocabulary sections, but here's that page right there. Boom, 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 boom. So there's that one that I used, and this one is printed in Japan. And then this one is progressing from intermediate to advanced.
Ooh.
So this one is ridiculously hard. Like I just opened up. I mean, I probably still struggle with some sections, like the actual, because grammatically correct spoken Japanese and actual grammatically written,
right.
Written English and spoken English are completely different things too.
100%. Yeah.
Yeah. So you can see like these guys, they're just, it's just jam packed full of Japanese and stuff like that. So.
Yeah, actually, always talk about how foreigners could probably pass the like C2 English exam way better than me, but I guarantee you they will never speak as well as me because I'm a native speaker.
Native speaker, yeah. And I guess the last the book that I'll show is just kind of this one. This one just kana and kanji. This is just a really good book. I never wrote in it. Because I wanted to save it for practice, but this is just a good way for writing practice. 'Cause I never wrote in it because I wanted to save it for practice. This is just a good way for writing practice. 'Cause I never wrote in it because I wanted to save it for practice. But this is just a good way for writing practice. for
Construction.
hiragana, katakana, and some kanjis. Learning kanji. So I wrote a lot of kanji, but my handwriting is horrible.
What's
Uh, so yeah.
what's really weird is just seeing you flip through, like just going through from where I've been through roughly 500 of the remember the kanji. Like I've
Mhm.
recognized like several of those even at glance.
Yeah. You know that one?
That is that? It looks like character
Character. It kind of looks like kanji, but that one's actually like
or
gaku,
gaku.
or so you would say daigaku. Do you know daigaku?
Daigaku is some sort of school, a student, right? Daigaku.
Yeah. Dai is
Daigaku is
big, and
big.
gaku is school.
Daigaku, so like high school,
A little bit bigger.
right? Oh no, it's college.
Yeah, so
Daigaku.
daigaku is like big school, the big
Daigatsu.
school, daigaku. And chugako is has the like chu, you
Chu.
know, chu.
Chuji.
Chu is middle.
Middle. Yeah, so like
Chu.
middle school. Chugak.
Yeah, middle school.
Chugatsu.
And shogako is sho is the character for small and school.
Small school. Shogak. So what would that be like elementary school?
Yeah, for sure, for
Yeah.
sure. Yep, elementary school. High school is the only one that's different. It's koko,
Koko.
which is like it's like high school. So takai, the kanji. I don't know how far you're on kanji, but takai, like I don't know, takai is like takai is expensive.
Because expensive. I was gonna say expensive. Or didn't it use for like tall as well
Yeah,
sometimes?
it's the same. It's the same kanji. Yeah, takai and takai. Those depending on the context, what it is.
Yeah.
But they use the kanji for takai or tall, and then school. That means high school. So you have shogakko, chugakko, koko,
Koko.
daigaku. Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure.
Because I
So,
get confused sometimes between Daigakse and Daigaku Insei.
yeah, graduate student. Yeah, very
Yeah.
very much, very much. So.
Not necessarily confused, but it took me a little bit because like when I first heard those words, they were so similar because it's the difference in Daigakse and Daigaku Insei. Like it's like they're so close.
Yeah,
Um,
for sure, for sure.
so
Karu in the chat there actually used the same kanji, gaku in a different way, manabu. So that kanji, and as you know, Japanese kanji, they have many different readings.
oh yeah,
So you think you've learned them all? You've
nope,
just begun. Like
yeah,
again, I've been doing this for 15 years. I can't read half the kanji that I see on a daily basis, and I have to look it up. And I don't think there's any problem with that.
no.
I can communicate and I can get everything done that I need to be done. For sure, for sure.
Let's see. We will go. Emmanuel Macron says, "Do you think Duolingo will take over the language world the same way Amazon took over online retail?" I think Duolingo has already taken over the language world. Like
Yeah,
it's
I
become
don't
so
know.
big.
Yeah, I used it a little bit. I was like randomly, a couple years ago. I don't know. It was just forced into my face somehow through some sort of marketing or something like that. I'm like, what is this? I picked it up and I was like, let's just do some German just because. Why not?
Yeah.
And it was fun. It was definitely fun. Kind of repetitive, but definitely it had the fun aspect to it. I didn't really like the whole you got to pay blah blah blah, for it because I wasn't too serious into it. So I don't really know too much about it, just on the surface level. It definitely, I think it would be a fun tool. But again, it kind of goes back to what I said earlier. You got to use it in balance with other stuff, for sure, Yeah.
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 I think it's already taken. Like as a matter of fact, I had I think I used this exact analogy when I had an interview on Lindy Boite's channel. She was asking like about my just in general when I started language learning, and I think that Duolingo has become this generation's Rosetta Stone because when I started learning Japanese in 2009, which you may think is my God, 2009, and you can barely. But it's been an up and down battle, man. But the thing that is, people who don't know language learning and who have no interest in language learning knew what Rosetta Stone was. Even still to this day, still know what Rosetta Stone. Like
Yeah.
it kind of transcended the idea. It's kind of like Hulk Hogan, right? If you don't watch wrestling, you probably still know who Hulk Hogan is.
I know Hulk Hogan for sure. Yeah.
Rosetta Stone transcended language learning. And I think Duolingo has become that. People who have no earthly idea about language learning know what Duolingo is.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. I've been asked, in the past, way back in the past, maybe 5, 6 years, something ago, before Duolingo existed, about Rosetta Stone. And I kind of gave everybody my thing about it. I never used it, you know, I never used it. I don't know much about it. I will say, and they were asking specifically for Japanese. And I said, I think it's probably a good tool. I know that it's very expensive. And the only other thing with like Rosetta Stone, and I guess maybe even with Duolingo, that I don't necessarily like is the whole get rich quick scheme. Like, get our Rosetta Stone, and you're going to be speaking like a native in 6 months.
Yeah.
And that's a whole nother bag of worms, But I don't like the whole, and I think that's one of the when I stumbled upon your channel, I think you just happened to kind of be talking about that, and I commented about it, like, something about the whole, basically like the false hope, like you buy our expensive product and you're automatically going to be able to speak the language like a native. Like, not going to happen, not going to happen. So I tell people, if you want to buy Rosetta Stone, do it. I didn't do it, so I can't recommend it to you, but you can't just rely on that, and I'll just keep saying that till the day I die. Anytime I've been asked about how did you learn Japanese, well, it's a very personal thing for me. I can give you some ideas, some tips, but it's up to find what works for you, and do that a lot, for sure. But
I still remember some of the stuff that they taught in, that I learned in, because I went hard on Rosetta Stone for a little bit. I don't remember all of it, because you're talking again 10 years, but 11 years, 2009. So, and I don't even know if this is going to be correct now, but I know like one of the main things I remember that they taught was like, what is it? Is it Noroga suite imas, or is it Noroga? Yeah.
Nodo kawaita. Nodo kawaita is like, I'm thirsty.
That's
Onaka ga tsuita. Onaka tsuita is like my stomach is empty.
Yeah. I would always get those confused, the onaka ga suite and then nodo ga kawaite, because it's like they're so
kawaita. Yeah.
Kawaita.
Like,
so,
your throat is dry, basically.
Yeah. But I do remember them teaching that. And then I remember, just a handful of other things. One thing I will say about Rosetta Stone is, I've never really mentioned this in the past, but it actually helped me a lot with recognizing hiragana.
For sure, yeah.
Because they would have the interspersed lessons where they would teach you about 5 of them, and you would have to click on which one it was. So that was a little bit of kind of help in there,
For sure, yeah. So, like I said, I wouldn't bash on it. I never bashed on it. I gave them just kind of my honest opinion. I don't know. But what I see from someone who'd never used it and got to a level of proficiency that I am with Japanese, that, again, the whole marketing scheme, like, hey, buy our language, spend a lot of money on us and you're going to speak perfect. Well, it might work for a lot of people, might not work for you. So just keep that in mind before you spend money. So that's kind of my thing with it, for sure.
The smart thing, the smart marketing part of that is 90. All right, I'm not going to say 99. I'm going to say 95%. And it probably is higher. Maybe I'm being judgmental, but 95% of people that pay have $200, $300, $400, whatever the cost is, they're not even going to finish the first part of it.
Yeah.
So
that's true.
It doesn't really matter if it works, because the amount of money they've made off of people who have never even finished, like, because they'll have them in like units, and there's probably, I guarantee you over half for sure. Like, not even being stupid, I guarantee you over half didn't even finish that. So,
for sure. So I definitely think it's good. And another thing too, that going back to the Rosetta Stone and maybe Duolingo as well. Again, I don't have too much experience with either one, but from my perspective, another little side story, I just finished paying off all of my student loans. And that's the point I want to try to tie in to, where I paid a lot of money my college degree. 10, 15, 20, 30, 100 times more expensive than than Rosetta Stone, right?
Yeah.
But if you buy our magic program, you'll be able to speak better than someone who spent hundreds of thousands. I didn't spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on college, but I spent a lot of money on college.
Right.
So it kind of felt like you're trying to undercut my undermine or undercut. I don't know the correct word, but I spent a lot of money and a lot of time
Yeah.
paying back my student loans, and they're finally gone, like literally 2 days ago. So
Yeah, I saw you. I think you'd posted that on Twitter.
yeah, no, it was a great experience, and I paid 98% of that. I got a little bit of help from my older sister. I love you, sis. You're not watching, but she helped me with a good, little chunk of change there, and I was like, yes, so
Just to get it done.
yeah, and she gave me, it was a birthday present, and it was a birthday present, and she paid like maybe $3,000-$4,000, and I was like, hell yeah, that took off many months of payments. But
Yeah.
anyway, so that's my other thing with Duolingo and those other things, where I spent not only so much more money, so much more of my life, and that kind of goes to a different point that I always make with language, is that with Japanese, for me, I made it a part of myself. It was a part of my personality.
Right.
It was a part of my everyday life. It was a part of my attitude, a part of my mindset, a part of me. And if you think about language, it's not separate from you. It's a part of who you are, And
Yeah.
it kind of is a physical thing, because, you're vibrating muscles in your body and using your breath and, using chemicals in your brain and stuff like that. So it does have some physical properties to it. So I always thought about Japanese as another arm or another,
Mm-hmm.
it's a part of who I am, and I try to internalize it as part of me. And I think if you want to get at, a higher level of language proficiency in whatever language you're learning, you have to do that. You have to make it who you are,
Yeah.
part of your personality, part of your everyday, part of your world. And you'll see the results that you want,
Yeah.
for sure.
You get what you put in.
Yeah,
Let's see
for
here.
sure.
All right, we got a couple questions here. Which type of advice would you have? Which type of advice, or I guess, what advice would you have for an advanced learner who is trying to get their reading to a better level? I've been trying out many methods for looking up everything to reading more. I guess.
Mhm.
I mean, ultimately. I mean, again, I'm not sure I would take my advice based on the level of proficiency I am in languages, but I mean, it's just one of those things. Like, it's going to sound like such a cop-out answer, but you literally just have to read more, right? Like, if you're struggling hearing the language, you got to listen to it. You might not understand it, but you're gonna have to put hours and hours in. If you're struggling reading, you're just gonna have to read. Like, that's the only way.
I agree. I mean, I think it's you have to read. I think I saw that question kind of passing by. I think Andy he gave a pretty solid like advice as well, but maybe an audiobook to where you're kind of reading it and also hearing it at the same time.
Yeah.
So definitely, and I think every single language is different. So if you're asking about Japanese, it's going to be different for Swahili or whatever language, depending on the complexity of the language and whatever level you're at, So for me, I would say my worst skill in Japanese is reading, but I'm still really high proficient level. Like I can read and write, professional emails in Japanese. It just takes me, where email that would take me 5 minutes in English would take me 20 minutes in Japanese,
Right.
or 30 minutes in Japanese, so Japanese reading and writing is very difficult, and it's even difficult for Japanese people.
Yeah.
So with Japanese specifically, you just have to kind of buckle down, have a good dictionary on hand, and I think again with your stream with Andy, you guys talked about it a little bit, but kind of try to find reading material that's at your level. With Japanese specifically, like if you are trying to read something that's way over your level, it's gonna be discouraging.
Yeah.
I've tried to read some stuff in some novels and stuff like that in Japanese, and I just end up like it's just not worth it for me. I lose interest. I'm having to look up too many words, and I'm like, it just because when you read, because I'm a big reader, I have literally 20 books at my feet right now, English books. And I prefer to read in English because I'm a reader, and that's
Right.
different. Different, people. Kind of another little side shoot because I get derailed all the time. People learn differently.
Yeah.
If you're a visual learner, if you're an auditory learner, if you're a reading and writing learner, reading is your thing. I don't think I was in Japanese specifically, but yeah, long story short, you got to read a lot. You got to read a lot and get books and whatnot. Oh, that was my point. When I'm reading in English, I can kind of have a visual image, like I can paint a picture in my head, whatever the fantasy or whatever that I can't really do that in Japanese as well if I'm having to look it up every 10 minutes and kind of break my little daydream bubble.
And you don't want to. You also don't want to get too advanced because anything that you're doing that creates a negative relationship with that language is going to be incredibly demotivating, and that's going to take its toll.
Like, oh, why am I doing this? Oh my god, I'm so horrible at Japanese or French or Spanish or whatever, and then you end up giving up. So always keep your language experience positive. I was never like, oh, Japanese, I gotta study Japanese. I was always like, oh yes, I gotta study Japanese. This is awesome.
That's what's changed for me. Like I said, I'm doing this immersion thing for the past since April 1st is when I started, and so every day instead of being like, oh, I've got to do 2 lessons on Duolingo or 2 lessons on Lingodeer, whatever applications I was using, because I deleted all those from my phone. I think, I have like a Japanese dictionary, but I'm talking about like the gamification. I'm like, oh, cool. Let me see if these a couple of Japanese YouTube channels that I watch regularly. Let me see if they uploaded videos. Like, it's like fun. I'm like, yes, I can't wait to go watch.
For sure. With all the free stuff out there nowadays, and like, because language learning, I think it started to boom maybe 10 or 15 years ago, but now it's really blossoming kind of thing. It's becoming more normal. There's so many different resources and so many different things out there for pretty much any language under the sun you can think about. Nowadays, there's so many resources out there, and I just don't know why people wouldn't try to pick up a new language. It's, I have a whole presentation that I do in Japanese to try to get kids interested in English. Well, actually not in English. I lean them towards English, but basically I lean them towards learning a second language because Japan is very homogenous and it's all about Japan. They're trying to learn English, but it's still, it's a pulling teeth. It's an uphill battle sometimes with that. So one of the I guess advantages is that there's just so much stuff out there. There's so much resources out there, and it's just really interesting. And one of the other bigger points that I make, and we're kind of going off on a different topic, but the main reason why I started studying a second language, and I don't say Japanese, a second language, is because of the opportunity to meet new people, make new friends, because it's so interesting. If I didn't start studying Japanese, I wouldn't be sitting here and I wouldn't be talking to you.
That's true. Yep.
I wouldn't have met my wife. My beautiful son that I love, my beautiful wife that I love, I wouldn't have met them. I would have probably been on a tractor in Kansas. My community is a farming community. There's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah,
but that's
took you on a whole different life.
Took me in a whole different life. And if that's the thing for you, definitely I think languages are your ticket. If you want that journey, and I think languages are a journey.
Yeah,
and they can take you to amazing places. Just by learning a language.
I think what's funny is you took the positive route, because I tweeted yesterday, like, I don't know what exactly I was thinking of, but I thought, everything that I've ever failed at in life has brought me to the current point I'm at, and I'm super happy. So I would not go back and change, getting this job or doing that, because like the point that I'm at right now is cool. Like, you took the opposite of that. You were like, here's the positives, and I was like, all these failures have built me to who I am. You know what I mean? But like,
failures are definitely, they're definitely, language learning, pulling it back to language learning, they're an important part. And kotowaza, I'll drop a little bit of kotowaza knowledge on you, is shippai wa seiko no moto. Shippai wa seiko no moto, which is failure is the root of success.
It's super true.
Basically, learn from your mistakes. You learn from your mistakes. Yeah. If you want to succeed, you have to fail. So for sure, and definitely, I think mistakes and any wrong turns that you make, they build character. and you got to learn from them,
Yep.
and try to stay positive. I'm not positive all the time, but I try to take that route as much as possible, just because.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I agree. Do you guys think it's better to develop a chip where you can download the language you want to speak and install it into your brain rather than having to learn it for years? I
I
I think it's a whoa, I went way back up in chat. I think it's a fun idea. My thing is I think that is like the ultimate, like I feel like that's such an American thing. Like I don't know if it is or not, but like I feel like that's such an American idea. Like
yeah.
hey, what can we do to, my god, how far up the chat have I gone here? I feel like, how American can we make this? What can I do to completely just not put any effort into it? I like the effort, and that sounds like such a cop out and stupid thing to say. Like, oh, look at me, I like effort, but like I feel like it's going to be more appreciated if you have to actually work for it.
Yeah, for sure. I see that here in Japan too, to where there's all these little pocket translators and at a lot of the big electronic stores that are just they're not trying to replace people like me that can bridge the gap between English speakers and Japanese speakers, but there's a lot of that technology too, because Japan is known for its technology. Not as much as now, because everywhere in the world is getting much more advanced in technology, but Japan does it a little bit too. But I kind of another little side thing that I have, but I always think about like when I get old and gray, what technology, if you think about kind of like people in their 70s or 80s right now, they probably don't know how to work this that well.
Yeah.
And it's maybe not a part of their life,
Yeah.
In, I'm 34. In the next 50 years, when I'm 84, I'm super ass old. What technology is going to be out there that I just don't have any interest in, and that I'm not necessarily going to be able to use.
Yeah.
Like
think about how much technology has
advanced.
Think about how much technology has advanced in the last 10 years.
Oh yeah,
So,
for sure.
yeah,
Just
man,
because of this. So for me, I don't think I would put that chip in my brain, but it could exist. Like
Yep.
way back when Star Trek, they had iPads basically, and people, they had things that were like little iPads and stuff like that, and that wasn't a thing back in the 60s or 70s or whenever, Star Trek and stuff like that was on, but now they exist.
Yep.
So it could happen, but I just don't think it would be the thing for me, and it's kind of, yeah, that's that.
Yeah. No, I agree. I mean,
Yep.
it's crazy to think about where I keep seeing these like ads for like things where you can speak and it auto translates the language. I think the biggest thing with the idea of downloading a language is there's still going to be computer error, right? Like and especially depending on how different the language is. Because if you go to Google Translate for Japanese, there are times when like you might, and obviously it's going to be a crazy example, but like if you're trying to say I sit in the chair, Google Translate is going to give you I changed my air filter. Like it's that off sometimes in Japanese because of the way like kanji and stuff work.
For sure. Yeah, the Google Translate, I want to say it's trying to get better. I will still use it occasionally because it's out of convenience. If it's just something, I can pop into there really quick.
Yeah.
But 9 times out of 10, I'm not going to use it. I'm at a point where I can figure out what I need to figure out without it. But I have seen it get a little bit better, but it's just definitely not the answer.
Yeah.
And for Japanese, it's still got a ways to go. There's a lot of nuances, and you might be saying this, but you mean something else, and there's just no way to translate that through an app. For sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
And like I said, I think the closer it is to English, I mean, I don't know if it's just English purely people that are working on that, but it seems like your Spanish and French. I actually watched a video. There's a channel on YouTube called Get Germanized, and
Get Germanized.
Yeah, he did a test on, and he was saying like off the wall stuff for Google Translate for German, and he kept being like dumbfounded at how accurate it was. Like he was like, "This is actually," real. But I think again, a lot of it has just how similar it is. I just think that there's so many things in and not just Japanese, all Asian languages, just because it is so absolutely polar opposite from Western culture that it's hard to translate that stuff.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. Yeah, but technology, like I said, I still think it is definitely advancing. And again, I didn't have as many. I had when I started studying, that just wasn't a thing. I didn't have a smartphone, and for the longest time, I didn't have this for the longest time in
Yeah.
my language learning. So it's a very different thing for the learners nowadays. At the stuff that they have, I just had to rely on books, and I would say my number one resource is other people, having people around me to communicate with, and I'll keep going back to that. But that was different for me because my goal with Japanese was to communicate, and that's what it was for me, a communicative thing. And I wanted to immerse myself into meet new people and use this language to do that. And if that's not your thing, if you want to be a translator and you just want, you don't necessarily want to talk with people, you just want to translate anime, I think that's awesome. There's definitely a need for it. You might not need the same skills as I would for communicating with people.
Right.
You definitely need more reading, writing, and listening instead of speaking and whatnot, communication.
Yeah. Did you ever do any like shadowing and stuff?
Oh yeah, all the time for sure. I would way back in the day, I would listen to a lot of Japanese music, so I would try to sing. But obviously, when you're singing in Japanese, it's not spoken, obviously, because it's a different form of language.
Yeah.
Essentially. So I'd pick up vocabulary there, but I would when I was watching TV shows and dramas, and I watched a lot of like just actual like dramas, Japanese dramas. I don't like drama, like that's not my thing. But I watched Rookies, which is a very funny one. Rookies it's about baseball. I'm a baseball fan. I like baseball. It's all about baseball. So trying to shadow them, and I think Andy talked about it too. But like you learn in college, you kind of when you speak, you have a more feminine side to the way you speak. So I was watching that like kind of baseball drama, Rookies, to get more of a manly. I want to sound more like a man in Japanese.
Right.
And because I went through that whole phase, and now I just don't care because I'm a foreigner and I'll never, whatever.
Right. You're just happy to communicate.
Yeah, I'm just happy to communicate, and I can carry along with my day and get anything I want done in Japanese. And for sure, yeah. So I did do shadowing. I would say like, oh my, I don't know. I've been watching Andy's Yakuza streams, which are like ridiculously fun.
No, that's like one of my favorite game series ever.
Oh yeah. The Japanese that you learn from there is definitely not useful, but there are like when they're doing the whole like, that's not useful. You're not going to use that, but there are some little pieces and snippets of actual really good concrete everyday Japanese in that game that you can use,
Yeah,
for sure. Yeah. So I did shadowing mainly through just watching TV programs and whatnot. Another thing, and I want to kind of segue off into it because it's one thing I wanted to talk about and kind of promote a little bit. And I think you should look into it maybe for your son. You have a son, right?
Yep.
Are you familiar with Concordia Language Villages? Concordia Language Villages. So I think I mentioned to you through Twitter, but I taught Japanese for 3 years at Concordia Language Villages. And these are basically English or language summer camps in Minnesota. And every summer, they have probably close to 60 to 80,000 kids that go to these summer camps every year. And they have about 20 some odd languages. Japanese was one. They have Korean, Chinese, Russian, Spanish, German, French, Hindi. They have a bunch. They have Norwegian, Russian. They have lots of different languages, 20 to 25 different language camps, right? Yeah. And they're immersion camps. So we would spend 24/7 in Japanese. The kids would come there. We wouldn't speak, well, we'd speak Japanese to them for 23 hours out of the day. Obviously,
Whoa.
when we're sleeping, we're not speaking to them because we're sleeping. But there was 1 hour of kind of cabin time with our villagers. We called them villagers, not campers.
Hmm.
That we would kind of debrief about the day. Like, we would be speaking to them Japanese the entire time.
Neat.
The entire time they were there. So it is really good immersion. Because it forced me. I was a college student when I was doing that, so I was still studying. So that was another way that really escalated me because for 3 months, so I guess I did that for 3 years, for 3 months during the summer. So a total of 9 months. And around the mid stages of my study, every single day I was immersed in it.
Yeah.
Every single day, 24/7. So going back to that 1 hour time, it was just kind of a debrief to ask the kids, hey, did you hear any words that, we were shouting at you and you didn't understand or whatnot, anything you want to know. But basically it's just a summer camp to where if you want to play basketball, we play basketball, but I'm speaking to you in Japanese, and we do a lot of culture activities. Like, we did like kendo. I taught being a drummer, and I have a guitar back there, so I'm pretty musical as well. I taught taiko drumming.
Hmm.
Um, and there was some Japanese cooking and tea ceremony, and we just did all sorts of. Basically, we tried to make a little Japan in Minnesota, in the woods of Minnesota. So I recommend, I recommend for anybody who has kids later on in life, if they're interested in languages, look up Concordia Language Villages. And they have many different programs. They have like 2 week, or I think they have 1 week programs for younger kids where they'll go to the French camp and they'll do French stuff for an entire week,
Yeah.
every single day. They have 2 week, 2 week, 2 week programs where 2 weeks you're spending 2 weeks in the woods in Russian, and you learn Russian songs and dances and food and whatnot. And they also have 4 week programs to where the kids are spending. When I say kids, the 4 week program is only open, I think, for like upper middle schoolers to high schoolers to seniors.
Hmm.
They're spending a whole month, in their target language. And those kids they're called credit students. And those credit students will actually, depending on their school board, Concordia Language Villages, basically the kids, it's a more intensive course, and they actually have like homework and different assignments, and they have a final project that they have to do.
Hmm.
And the credit teachers have to document everything these kids did so that these kids can actually take everything that they did over that month back to their schools, and it's up to their schools to kind of decide whether they're going to give them credit. And I think Concordia Language Village is like, I don't know what they boast, but it's like a 90 some odd percent rate that you're going to get actual high school like credits
Hmm.
in your language.
Whoa.
So I rep Concordia Language Villages, CLV, as much as possible because it changed my life. Some of the best summers of my entire life. And really, I would say that's another one of my positive motivations.
Yeah.
Teaching the language, teaching Japanese to people that were interested in it.
Yeah. You said that was in just Minnesota, right?
Minnesota, yeah, Minnesota.
That's
Just
such
Minnesota, but they do have
such a
satellite
strange
campuses. I
place.
think they did like a Spanish camp somewhere in Georgia. I mean, I was all about the Japanese camps.
Yeah.
So, but they have camps like nationwide, definitely. But look up Concordia Language Villages. It's run through Concordia College in northern Minnesota. But if your son later on down the road, he says, "Hey, I want to learn Korean or Chinese or Spanish, something like that," like chuck him off to summer camp, and he'll get immersed in that for
Yeah.
sure.
That's
For
a
sure,
that's a
I
super.
definitely think it's really cool too. They also have like they have weekends like over the summer. Excuse me, over the winters, but it's in Minnesota. So if you don't do well with like winter, like it's
Yeah.
like a family weekend. You can go there for like a weekend retreat and spend 2 or 3 days completely in whatever target
Yeah.
language they're offering, which is really cool.
Cool. Yeah, that sounds super awesome. Let me see. All right, I've got to scroll back up here. I'm missed some stuff. Questions are
Sure.
popping off today. All right, so we'll hit on a couple of these super. Let's see. Whoa, hour and 40 minutes. Yeah, we'll start
Yeah.
wrapping some stuff up here. Let's see.
Cool.
Do you guys think it's possible to bring back dead languages? Well, the only thing that I have experience with is not I don't have experience with it. Hebrew was a dead language for a long, long time. Like I think it's the only, if I'm not mistaken, I think it's the only language that ever actually fully died and then came back.
Yeah, I don't
Um,
have much to add on the Hebrew, but what I can speak on that a little bit with Japanese in that I have where's it at? Oh, there it is. So in college, I studied Okinawan.
Okinawan.
And basically Okinawan is not a dialect; it's its own language. Because way back when Okinawa was not Japan, and Japan wasn't Japan way back in the day.
Hmm.
It was warring stuff like that. Whatever. I'm not going to get into that. But Okinawa was its own kind of different thing, and it's a very rapidly dying language. And I think not only with there's many languages that are just kind of going extinct, and that's kind of language evolves,
Yeah.
and I guess you could say Darwinism, survival of the fittest. I guess there's definitely the languages that are, you know, they're just so ingrained that it's just for the foreseeable future of our lifetime they're not going to go away. But
Yeah.
I think if it's languages like that, if it's not, I'm not saying that you can't revive it if it's not part of your culture.
Hmm.
I'm not saying that you can't do it. I just think that the people that are doing a lot of amazing work in reviving those languages, like it's part of their heritage. So they're a little bit more invested in it.
Yeah.
You know, I thought it was really dang cool because Okinawa's an amazing place, and I've been there like twice, and it's great. And one of my best friends is from Okinawa, so I just picked up some, some words. So I'm not really doing anything to you know help it revive
Right.
or anything like that. So I think it's definitely doable, but the time and effort that you have to spend into it is not as easy as what
Yeah.
either one of us could do. Or if
Right.
that's your thing, do it, go for it. I totally think it's a great thing, for sure.
Yeah. Do you think raising multilingual kids could cause a problem if your partner or when your partner doesn't speak the other language? I don't. I mean, not necessarily. Like, I could see them getting mad if you were just speaking to them all the time in that language, and like, you and your kid were just constantly like trashing on the other parent. But like, I don't like.
Mhm.
I feel like any parent would probably be happy. Like, oh man, that's cool. Like even if you're English speaking Spanish, if you're married to someone who speaks Spanish and they're I don't see why anybody would care. That's just creating opportunities for their kid. I don't think I think any I dare to say smart person, but I think any person who wants the best for their kid would be happy about it, even if they
For
didn't speak it.
sure. Yeah, I've seen like firsthand experience to this. I mean, fortunately, I speak Japanese, so I completely understand that. But I know a lot of people, in Japan too, where I know I have a few friends that they just don't speak any Japanese at all, and it can sometimes cause some problems. And I can't speak for everyone, but I have seen, and I've had some friends who over drinks just needed to vent to me like, hey, like she says this a lot. What does it mean? So everybody's different, and then it can leak down into the kids, but I'm not an expert on that as well, or at all. I don't know. I can't talk about that too much, but I would say that it's not impossible. It can kind of get one sided or whatnot, and I've seen when I was in Hawaii, I saw it quite a bit to where
Really?
the kids, yeah, they had like a kind of a local Hawaiian guy. Their dad was from Hawaii, whatnot, and mom was Japanese, so her English wasn't that well, and his dad had no concept of Japanese, whatnot. And you could kind of see it in the kids to where they were opportunistic, like, oh, I want this, so I gotta ask dad, so mom won't understand. or oh, I
Gotcha.
want this to happen, so I got to ask mom in Japanese because dad will probably won't approve. So, you know, I think
I could
I'm
see
not
that
saying,
being.
yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
So, yeah, I mean, I think there's many different people around the world. I think there's definitely some advantages, definitely in my situation, but for sure, there
Yeah.
are many different families, many different strokes for many different people. For sure.
Let's see. My dream is to raise my future kids multilingual. I say go for it. I think that's a great thing.
Yeah.
Blah blah blah. Are there any camps in Alabama? That is just in Minnesota.
I think I'm
And
not sure if there's any in Alabama. You have to go to Concordia Language Villages. Look up CLV, but Concordia Language Villages, and they have satellite campuses. I think all throughout
cool.
the United States, but I don't know exactly where.
Yeah,
So
so
you have to
get
check
that
that
check
out.
out.
Check with there.
Let's see. What are your thoughts on Takashi's new song? I don't know what a Takashi is.
I I don't know Tekashi as well. Sorry.
Please answer my question above. I'm assuming. Hopefully I did. Let me know if I did not. Where's the
Yeah.
adult version? What is happening? Manual marker on Takashi's new song is dope. Okay, cool. So we are there. I'll give you guys a couple more seconds because I know there's like a 30-second delay. If you have any final questions, let me know and I'll start wrapping this up.
For sure.
Just because I always try to be mindful of people's time. I hope you had an hour and 50 minutes to spend
Yeah, my wife texted
chatting.
me too. She's like, "It's almost noon here," so she was like, "Oh, I get the wife
So
text from."
yeah,
She's in the other room and she's texting me, so it's like,
yeah. Come help with the kid. Come help with the kid. So,
yeah,
but yeah, we'll start wrapping up.
yeah.
So thanks everybody for watching and for like I said, I know there's like a 20 or 30-second delay. So if any final questions pop in, we'll answer them real quick. So, but
Mhm.
thank you for joining, man. It's fantastic chat.
Oh no, yeah, this was great. This was a great
So
experience, and I want to do more of this. I want to do more of this. I would love to connect with some of the other people you connected with. Um, and Andy says was talking about the adult version of the language camp. They have it. Yeah, they have it. And they have their village weekends. They're called village weekends, so they have immersions for adults as well. If you can make it
gotcha.
up to, I think those are only in Minnesota, so you have to get up to Minnesota to do that.
Gotcha. Okay, gotcha. For some, when he said the adult version, like I almost thought he was talking about because he said, "What's your thoughts on
Mhm.
Takashi's song?" So I thought Andy went and googled that. He's like, "Where's the adult version? I want the unrated version." So
Okay, all right.
let's see. All right, Peggy says,
For
"Any
sure,
advice on a
for sure.
schedule on a study schedule? If you're, I mean, advice on a study schedule. I mean, literally just kind of
Find out what works
find.
best for you. I
Yeah,
can't really give you any advice for that.
it's
Yeah.
it's it's hard to do, and I know that always feels like such a cop out thing, but like it really is like kind of up to your own discretion, like whatever works best for you.
Well,
If you only have an hour in the morning, cram an
mhm,
hour in the morning. If you can do 30 minutes in the morning and 30 minutes at lunch, do it. It's kind
for
of
sure.
hard. So
The only schedule advice I give you is every day. But how
yeah,
much during every day is totally up to you and what fits into your schedule.
yeah, for
Yep.
sure. Let's see. Can you teach me how to grow a
Apparently,
beard?
we have great beards.
Yeah,
You guys have great beards.
I would
Tell
say
my.
my tip is don't shave. That's literally all I do.
No.
That's my hair grows so fast that if I wanted to keep shaving, I would have to shave in the morning and at night. Like it just grows so fast. So
I hate it. I hate shaving. Anyway.
and you got the audiobook. Nice. All right, cool. So I think that wraps it up. Everybody go check out Dan, Come2Japan Dan, so to speak. Channel is linked in the description below, or you can just search Come2Japan with come and then the number 2 and then Japan. Go check that out. So yeah, thanks everybody for watching. Dan, thank you so much for joining, man.
Of course. I'd love to do this again. For sure.
Absolutely. So we'll get you back on. I'm perfectly fine with that, and go from there. So, do you have any final closing thoughts or anything like that?
Not really. I mean, like I said, my genuine goal is to give back to the community on my channel. So I really think that, people that come to Seabolt's channel can, benefit. If you're interested in Japanese, definitely come over to my channel. You can learn a little bit there. Check out Tokini Andy, who is in the chat.
Yeah.
He's a good buddy of mine. I moderate on a lot of his streams, and his videos are really good. If you really want good lessons, definitely check out Tokini Andy. But if you want, eventually, one day, my goal is to give away free trips to Japan, and I'm going to do that. And that it just all depends on people coming to my channel and creating a community. So I do some of the work, you do some of the work, kind of thing. So definitely come over to my channel, hang out. Yeah, and definitely check out Seabolt's channel. I love his down to earth, no BS opinion on language learning, and I think there needs more of that on the internet. So
Yeah.
that's all I got to say, and I think it's a lot of fun to actually to participate in something like this for sure.
Cool, man. Well, thank you for joining on. All right, guys, I'm going to end the stream. Thank you all for watching, and I'll be back. I do have tomorrow off, so I'm going to use tomorrow to study, but I'll be back Monday with another stream. So thank you all for watching, and I will see you
またね。
guys
ありがとうご
in the
ざいま
next
し
one.
た。